Many have been overwhelmed by the divisiveness in this election and the confusion surrounding the controversies. With the intensity of the conflicting voices in the current social-political climate of our country, it is becoming increasingly clear that as a society we need to make ourselves aware of how our government works and how leaders and officials can misuse their authority and hijack our government and systems. You may have heard of some of the controversies surrounding Hillary Clinton's time as the Secretary of State. Before we get into all that, here's a quick overview of the structure of the United States government. Now, for those of us that need a refresher, the United States is a constitutional republic with 3 distinct branches that work together using checks and balances to govern the people. These are the judicial, legislative, and executive branches. The judicial branch is made up of the Supreme Court and the other federal courts. Its function is to interpret laws, apply those laws to specific cases, and ultimately make sure they do not violate the Constitution. The legislative branch is comprised of the United States Congress, which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Their main function is to make laws. This includes writing, discussing, and voting on them. Finally, we make it to the executive branch. This branch of government consists of the President, Vice President, and the Cabinet. The majority of the power lies with the President, as he or she acts as the head of state and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Now, this is where we will begin to dive in. Much of the power and authority of the President of the United States is in his or her appointment of other officials. The President appoints Supreme Court justices with Senate approval in the case of a vacancy. Additionally, the President appoints the Vice President and 15 members of his or her cabinet, which act as the heads of 15 State Departments. This information is necessary to understand the significance and implications within the controversy currently clouding this election cycle, as much of it surrounds Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State. As we dive into the controversy, it is essential to identify 5 of the main players. 1. The Clinton Foundation. 2. Foreign governments and leaders. 3. Elite private donors. 4. The infamous private server. And 5. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. Now let's define each of these. The Clinton Foundation began as the channel for former President Bill Clinton to provide, in the words of the Foundation's website, a non-governmental organization that could leverage the unique capacities of governments, partner organizations, and other individuals to address rising inequalities and deliver tangible results that improve people's lives. Established in 2002, the Foundation grew and split into various initiatives. Many of those focused on health and emergency response, such as the Haiti earthquake. When Hillary Clinton was being considered for the Secretary of State position, many were quick to point out the tangled web of conflicting interests that would entail. Due to this, the Clintons assured President Barack Obama and the American people that they would release their donor lists annually. They didn't. They also didn't share that the donations of many foreign governments doubled and tripled during the time that Hillary Clinton was acting as Secretary of State. Next, foreign governments and leaders. Since its conception, the Clinton Foundation has raised nearly $2 billion from a large variety of donors. Many of these donors are the heads of foreign governments. Also, as previously stated, donations from foreign governments often doubled and tripled during Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State. These foreign donors, it's argued, had agendas beyond charity, hoping to use Clinton's position as leverage for their own interests. Some of these donations were from the governments of nations like Oman, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Hillary Clinton, on State Department business, met with representatives from at least 16 foreign governments as Secretary of State that then made donations totaling millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, a clear ethical dilemma. The Foundation did not submit those donation records to the State Department for review, nor did they disclose a complete list of their donors as they had promised. Similar to the donations of foreign governments and leaders, funds from elite private donors with special interests and agendas began to flood in as Secretary Clinton met with them. Also, as is typical of a former president after his time in office, Bill Clinton would collect speaking fees when speaking to groups at home and abroad. However, during his wife's tenure, he enjoyed paydays that had doubled and tripled, going from $150,000 for an address to incredible amounts like $500,000 that he received from a Russian investment bank or $750,000 for an address to a telecom conference in China. Critics argue that these special interest groups were hoping to do business with the Department of State and were seeming to try to sweeten the deal by donating large sums to the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation. This brings us to the private email server. Just previous to being sworn in as Secretary of State in 2009, Hillary Clinton had an email server set up in her home. She used the email address associated with this server, hdr22@clintonemail.com, for all of her email communications for both personal and professional matters during her entire 4 years in office. In addition, she created email addresses for Huma Abedin, her friend, confidant, and aide, as well as her State Department Chief of Staff, Cheryl Mills. In fact, she never even activated her state.gov email, which would have been secured, owned, and managed by the United States government. According to a March 2015 New York Times article, her expansive use of the private account was alarming to current and former National Archives and Records Administration officials and government watchdogs, who called it a serious breach. Finally, we come to Secretary Clinton herself. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton was the chief advisor to President Obama on foreign affairs. She was also responsible to carry out his foreign policy through the State Department. Her position and simultaneous involvement in the Clinton Foundation requires us all to call into question a couple of things. First of all is the apparent misuse and abuse of authority and connections with special wealthy donors, special interest groups, and foreign government leaders in her role as Secretary of State, and her husband's as a former President of the United States. It would appear that groups and individuals desiring a friendly audience or favor from the State Department donated vast sums of money to the foundation managed by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton. Secondly, we have to look at her handling of government information and communication, and the incredible lack of transparency or security as she used a private email server that was not able to be managed by the government. The tangled web of conflicting interests woven by Hillary Clinton and her positions as Secretary of State, as well as the face of the Clinton Foundation, is concerning. However, what becomes most disturbing is the receipt of strategic charitable donations that one can only imagine were in exchange for favors that could be granted to those same governments and elite special interest groups from the most senior state official, the Secretary of State. To make matters worse, there is an incredible lack of transparency employed by both the Clinton Foundation and Secretary Clinton through the use of her private server and neglecting to turn over donor lists or gain approval on any speaking fees. This brings us to the current presidential campaign. Let's take a look. In early March 2015, it is discovered that Clinton used a private server and personal email for government communications during an investigation of 2012 Benghazi attack. Later in March, the House committee issues a subpoena for all of Clinton's Libya-related emails. Clinton selectively hands over the emails that she says deal with government business. Her private servers are wiped clean and her devices are physically destroyed. In April, Hillary Clinton announces that she is running for president. In July of 2015, Clinton claims that she did not send or receive classified emails from her private email server as Secretary of State, saying, "I am confident that I never sent nor received any information that was classified at the time that it was sent and received." In August 2015, authorities confirmed there were multiple classified emails sent and received via Hillary Clinton's private email server. In January 2016, the Intelligence Community Inspector General alleges that some emails on Clinton's private server have been flagged as containing the highest top-secret level of classification. In June, Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton meet privately on a tarmac in Arizona in the midst of FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton. And just a few days later, in July 2016, FBI Director James Comey closes Clinton email investigation and states that although she and her aides were extremely careless in their handling of classified information, he would not recommend charges against Clinton. Then in August, newly released emails exhibit connection between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. And October 2016, new emails discovered an Anthony Weiner investigation case caused James Comey to reopen the Clinton email investigation. The reopening of this investigation triggered the leaking of FBI documents confirming the following. 1. The Clinton Foundation investigation is far more expansive than anybody has reported so far and has been going on for more than a year. 2. The laptops of Clinton aides Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson have not been destroyed, and agents are currently combing through them. The investigation has interviewed several people twice and plans to interview some for a third time. 3. Agents have found emails believed to have originated on Hillary Clinton's secret server on Anthony Weiner's laptop. They say the emails are not duplicates and could potentially be classified in nature. In addition to the email scandal surrounding Hillary's own email server and illegal activities surrounding her foundation, numerous sources have uncovered evidence of the same type of activity that has brought FBI scrutiny to the Clinton Foundation within the Clinton presidential campaign. Through a variety of sources, including leaked media and communications, we have learned of DNC corruption rigging primary election against the Bernie Sanders campaign, funding and placement of people to incite violence and make scenes strategically in front of press reporters at Trump rallies, breaking of campaign finance and election laws through illegal collusion between DNC, super PACs, and the Hillary campaign, members of the press providing debate questions to Hillary prior to multiple debates, and multiple members of the press working directly with the Clinton campaign behind the scenes, some even sending breaking news articles to campaign for approval. The DNC and the Clinton campaign have performed and funded many of their secretive, illegal activities in order to be picked up by the media. They then use these stories to paint a picture of a strong, calm, united, capable front in the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign that is then contrasted with a weak, dangerous, violent, divided, and even laughable Republican Party and Trump campaign. Through a variety of sources, the DNC and Clinton campaign have proven themselves to be in collusion with many members of the media and special interest groups. These different groups are all in hidden communication with one another, constantly refining a strategy that puts Hillary Clinton in office and them in a position to have access to the president, positions of authority, and the furthering of their agendas. If Hillary Clinton is elected as President of the United States, can she be entrusted with the authority to veto laws passed by Congress, to appoint the 15 cabinet members, to give executive orders bypassing the legislative branch, or to appoint up to 5 Supreme Court justices for lifetime terms? You decide.